to open us up. Ina. Ai,
Tēnā te reo whakamihi o Ranihera Waikato kei whare mai whare. Nā koutou, Debs, Raukawa. Nuta te wā Whaktau.
straight.
Arawa. Mahi te kāmai me te kamaku. Ka whakapō ngā wai rei. Waihou, Waihou. Hei te mei atu, ngā wha, ngui a tātou kata. Aunga kōrero. Whakaro pā. Te o muti tēnā. Aukawa. Hanga tautari. Tā tiwai. Ohunia. Nā. Aukia. Wai. Ora tama. Iki ara tama. Afema. English.
Kia ora. Thank you very much for that, Karakia, Councillor Kneebone, and welcome to the committee members for what is actually our first hui for this triennium. Seems like a long way into the triennium to have our first hui. So I'm pleased that we've been able to come together today. Given that it is our first, I'm wondering if the best place to start is just work our way around the table and introduce ourselves. And so we know everyone that's in the room, and then we can proceed with the meeting. Should we start with? Oh, sorry, just for those online, we have microphones. And if you push the right hand button, it will turn red. There we go. We can do it this way and
Ai, tēnā tātou. Rotahi mihi ka tika ki a koe, stu mō whakawairu o tēnei ata. Ko ana Bigby ahau, I am Group Manager for Pūtaka Taiao, Environmental Team.
Kia ora, Michelle Griffiths, I'm one of the Co-Charitable Trust trustees.
Atamari kia tātou, my name is Stephen. I'm born and bred in Te Poi, ni Matamata, and it's good to be in Stuart, tēnā koe.
Atamare te whānau, tēnā koe Stu, nau I whakatūwhera nei tā tātou hui. My name is Ashanti Neems, I'm the National Strategy Manager for the Environment for the Raukawa Charitable Trust.
Atamaria, kia koutou. I am here na tautoko ngā mihi kua mihia. Tēnā koe Stu, mō tō Karakia tēnei ata. My name is Mihi Wātara Hohepa, and I'm the Raukawa Strategy Manager at Raukawa Charitable Trust. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou, ko Andrea Julian Takuingoa. I'm the Regional Strategy Manager to Ura Ura and Pūtaki Taiao Environmental Team at Raukawa. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. Ko Chris McLeod tōku ingoa, tūmu whakarai, te kanahera rohi o Waikato, Chris McLeod, Chief Executive.
Good morning all. Robert Cookson, Constituent Councillor for Waihou. Born in Te Ara, lived in Te Ara his whole life. I live in a little place called Springdale, but the Maori name is Ottaway. And our family's been there for nearly 100 years farming. So I'm lucky enough now to be representing my community here. So thanks very much. Thank you. Pardon? Dairy farming. Thank you.
Well, morena koutou. Yes, Joe Kneebone, tōkunga. I'm a councillor for the Waipai King Country. I've been here on my 5th term now. So yeah, look, I always feel it's always good to meet with you all from Raukawa because I grew up in Tito and I've got very vivid memories of Anaru's dad doing the concrete for our cow shed when I was about 12 and having lots of conversations with him. And of course, prior to Tito, Dad and his father leased quite a bit of land in Kakahu Road, actually. And off the Hemis, I think. Yeah. And of course, of the way the school buses went, I went to school in Matamata. So when I used to go and stay with my cousins in Hinuera, we'd go on the Tupoi bus run with Stephen's younger brothers, I think. Yeah. So and of course Andrew's just down the road from me as well. So yeah, no, so good to be back together again after what's probably been too long. So yeah, ngā mihi.
Kia ora koutou, ko Bruce Clarkson aho. I won't claim any local residency apart from the fact that I've lived in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton for more than 35 years. Tōku monga ko Taranaki, tōku awa ko Manganui, ko Ngāti Pākehā te iwi. I'm a constituency member for Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, and also the Deputy Chair of the Council. Good to see you all here this morning.
Morena tātou, ko Leah tuku ingoa. I am Democracy Services at Waikato Regional Council, assisting Jordan today, who's helping run the meeting.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jordan. This is my second meeting. And so, yeah, Leah's helping me today. Thank you so much.
Kia ora, Jordan. Kia ora, ko Pamela Story tuku ingoa, ko hau te tia o te konihira rohi o Waikato. Thank you. Again, thank you, Stu, for the introduction. I am this is my second term as a councillor on Waikato Regional Council. I represent the Waikato constituency, and I'm dairy farming in Te Hoi. But I suppose that one of the fantastic benefits of being a part of this council is the opportunity to travel and get to know people across the Rohi, and so have spent quite a bit of time over the last few years in the Raukawa area and getting to know the various aspects of the unique nature of what you do, what Raukawa's focus is, and what your ambitions are. And it is such a pleasure to have Katarina sit around our table and bring her insight and her expertise to our deliberations and decision making. So really pleased to see this meeting today so that we can get underway in this triennium.
Before you do, sorry, Pamela, we have two staff at the back that are part and parcel of Raukawa that I really would like them to introduce themselves, as well as your own, please.
Kia ora koutou, ko Katrina Andrews tuku ingoa. I'm a policy advisor in the strategic and spatial planning team.
Morena koutou. Thank you for that, Katarana. Thought we got away with that. Ko Vicky Hayes tuku ingoa. I'm the business strategy manager for the Putaki Tawa team. Nice to meet everyone today.
Kia ora koutou, ko Zoe Thomas Takuingwa. I'm a policy advisor in the Putaki Tawa team.
Kia ora tātou, my name is Ashley, Herea Nōnai Tūhoi, but I grew up in the Raukawa Rohi, the little wee old town of Putaruru. I'm part of the Tairanga Whenua team of Kai Whakarite.
Tūtahi e mihi atu nei ki a koe te kai whakarite, Stu, me ngā mihi kua mihi a o tēnei hui i tēnei wā. E mahi anau o te kaunihera rohi o Waikato, ko Neville Williams tōku ingoa, Director for Customer Community and Services. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora tātou, ko Mālia Hipene Ahau, he ri tēnei no Ngāti Tūwharetoa, Ngāti Kahungunu, Ngāti Awa Hoki. Keeping it brief, I am the Poutu Hono here at Waikato Regional Council. Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koutou. Wow, never thought we'd get here. Tēnā koe Stu, tēnā koe Neville, tēnā koe Pamela. It's a privilege to be here. Ko Waihou, I te taha o tōku mama, ko Ngāti Tūwharetoa, I te taha o tōku papa, ko Ngāti Raukawa. I've had the privilege of sitting with RCT probably for almost 12 years now with Raukawa, and it's been a privilege that I've sat at your table. I think I came when you first got into your building here, and it's always awesome to see familiar faces around the table. And Pamela and I sat over there the last time, but it's a privilege to sit beside you and co-chair today. It's also, I'm very humbled to have Katarina with me. I think I started here with my training wheels with her, and as you can see, she's still leading the way and, you know, butts in when she does, as she does. That's our Katarina for us. We have the privilege of having her in that space. Ngā mihi ki te staff or Waikato Regional Council, I was going to introduce them, but kei te pai, it's always good to see the staff here, because without our staff, we can sit here and we're nothing. You know, they do the mahi for us behind the scenes, and they're our backbone. So it is with privilege that I come here and my team are right behind me. So without further ado, ngā mihi.
All right. I think we'll- Apologies, and then yeah, I'll go through all of this. Got it. Yep. All right, so we'll call, oh, first of all, we do need to do our health and safety statement, and seeing as we have new people, we'll go ahead and read it out, all right?
Morning, everyone. If there's an event emergency or anything that happens while we're in here, we'll head out that door there, and then there's a fire exit onto the street here. We'll head across to the park over there and wait for their instructions. If there is an incident outside by reception or anything, I'll guide you all in here, and we'll just chill there until it's over, and we'll get back to the hui after that. Cheers.
Thank you for that. Okay. So we'll go to the apologies. Are there any apologies? Sorry. No other apologies? All right. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kneebone, Councillor Cookson as a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. You'll see the agenda on page 2. Any members happy with that? Do I have a mover? Katarina, second, and Councillor Cookson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Disclosures of interest. Now, since this is the first time that this committee has come together, we do have new members, just wanting to ensure that we've got all of the registration and disclosures. I'm looking to Neville or Molly that we've gone through that process with all members. Ask for just before.
It would be useful to call for conflicts at this stage, Madam Chair, because we do not have a list of specific conflicts from the members from Raukawa. So if we could go through that process this morning, that would be
Okay.
appropriate.
All right. Just for ease, because I know that many of us around this table probably wear many, 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 many hats. I'm gonna first ask for any conflicts in relation to the agenda items today, because those would be the most pertinent. And then if there are any declarations of interest that people would like to raise specifically in this meeting, we can do that now. If there are other interests that you would like to declare through a registration process, we will go through that. Is that happy with that as a process? Just making sure. Yeah.
Kia ora, Michelle Griffiths. Just thought it was important to disclose today that I do hold an independent contract with the Waikato Regional Council as a peer review panel member for the Wairake Tauhara geothermal field.
All right. Any other registrations that people would like to declare? Yeah.
And I should also make it known that I'm also the Raukawa appointee to the Waikato River Authority.
All right. And I suppose if we're talking about the River Authority, we would note that the co-chair of the River Authority is also sitting around our table in Councillor Kneebone. Okay. Well, we'll note those disclosures, and Molly, can we have an action point to just communicate with all committee members so that we can get the appropriate registrations on file? All right, just checking, given that there was a declaration, do we need to move in second? Just noting, okay.
I guess you'll have to add that I'm a councillor as well.
Okay, so we'll go to confirmation of the previous minutes, and I suppose the challenge is who was there, who's here today that was there then? So do we have two people that can? Great. Great. Co-chair Debbie. Katarina, you. Oh. Oh, Councillor Nebo.
Stu was there.
Right, all right. I know, that's what I thought when I thought it was a misprint when I opened the agenda. All right, we've got a mover in co-chair Debbie and a second in Yvonne. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, Madam Chair, I'll hand over to you for our first.
Freshwater Policy Review, Work Program for 2024. Peter, hand it over to you.
Morena tātou, Naomi Crawford, tōku ingoa, team leader, Water Policy, Waikato Regional Council. And I'll just note that I'm standing in for Peter Wishart, who authored the report today. So I will take the report as read, but I'll just highlight both the purpose and the executive summary, and then I'm happy to go straight to questions on the report. So this report gives you an update of the Freshwater Policy Review Program at Waikato Regional Council. We're several years obviously into this process. The report highlights obviously the proposed reforms as signalled by the coalition government. It also talks about what the Freshwater Policy Review has achieved to date. Also the revised Freshwater Policy Review Program, which is going to Council for its consideration and approval in June. And the last section talks about Plan Change 1 as well, providing further information on an update. So the coalition government has signalled that its intent to replace the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management and also the National Environmental Standard for Freshwater. The process, it also talks about rebalancing Te Mana o Te Wai obligations, and that's happening in two different phases. So there's the first phase, which we're going to see in the end of May, which is to do with consent decisions and applications. And then the second part will be in a replacement of the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, which isn't due until that's within the next 12 to 18 months. So in the executive summary, we talk about obviously the significant work that we've achieved to date. We've done a lot of engagement with our communities, tangata whenua, sectors throughout the region, and that's occurred. We had round 1 in 2022, and then we had a round 2 last year. The policy development team has done a lot of work to date on specific issues and options throughout the region for particular topics. And again, I guess I'm just highlighting here that obviously the originally the RMA, within the RMA itself, it has been written that we were required to notify our freshwater planning instruments by 2024. Now that has actually been changed, obviously, with coalition government's changes at the end of last year. So that's now pushed out to 2027. So we also have some targeted engagement work streams as well. One of them is the Ngātira Mātauranga group, which is consists of a range of iwi and reps across the region. We've done some reporting on that, and that's all available on our public website. And we also have citizens reference groups as well, which are differentiated by freshwater management units. So that's catchments across the region. And you can see what those freshwater management units look like in attachment 1 of the report. So regarding, again, WRC staff are obviously considering the revised Freshwater Policy Review Program in light of the constant landscape of changes that the government is putting forward to us around, and we will be, like I was saying before, putting forward a revised program for council for its consideration and approval in June. The report also highlights, obviously, the importance of the JMA agreements and the management of the region's freshwater bodies, the vision and strategy, and kaupapa katiaki. And the other thing you can see in attachment 2 of the report is the actual letter that we received from Minister Bishop as well, which talks about obviously preserving vision and strategy, and obviously that we'll be abiding by our Te Tiriti claims settlement legislation. And the last section is Plan Change 1 update. So I just want to highlight there that we're expecting a decision on Plan Change 1 in mid to late 2024. Happy to take any questions.
Just one, thanks, Naomi. We can read all of this on a website, on where? Where do we find that? Waikato Regional Council?
Regarding like the engagement, is that what you mean? Or the,
You referred to your engagement with,
Yeah, if you just literally put Freshwater Policy Review, there's several different, it comes up and then you open that tab and they've got an engagement tab and it's got the reports in there. So yes, you can find all that information on our public website.
Perhaps if it would be helpful, we could send out a link to
Nice,
that.
yep,
Would that
thank
be
you,
helpful?
yep.
Just keeping it in your.
Madam Chair, I have one question. I don't know whether it's relevant or whether it's a comment. But after speaking with our team, so I guess it's around the Te Turu Waimana. And so it's around, we currently, this applies to the Waikato catchment, we know that. Is there a reason why we can't roll it out and apply the principles right across the region? I understand that's under WRA. I guess you can't make that decision, but is there a whakaaro around that? Is there any thoughts around what that might look like?
So are you sort of referring to the objectives of the vision and strategy? Yeah. Yes, we're certainly obviously having ongoing conversations about one of the key parts of our policy development process is obviously looking at all that information and incorporating that in the work that we're doing around the objectives, policies and rules and taking that all into consideration. The vision and strategy already sits within the regional policy statement, and so we must give effect to it, you know, in its entirety as well. So it's all built into the process of how we're updating the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, good morning. I missed your name. What's your name again?
Oh, Naomi Crawford.
Oh, right. Kia ora, kia ora. There seems to be it could be wrong and it could be right, an understanding in Raukawa that WRC is planning to put a hold on the freshwater policy review. Is that right? Or are you extending it out to 2026, the work that we need to do there? Because it impacts on us if you hold it up. If you're not going to continue working on the review of the freshwater policy. Oh, who am I looking at? Oh,
You want to take it to Chris?
I know it's one of your KPIs and it came up yesterday in the EPC. But
I'll have a go at it. The government has extended what was a December 2024 timeframe to have this plan out until 2027. There have been some signals, I suppose, from some ministers that maybe we should slow down or stop doing work on it until they give us new direction. Because the government process for providing new direction, and they've indicated they will go through the normal legislative process, is at least 18 months away. So there is kind of no direction. We've been given no direction in writing from ministers to stop. So so legally, we should be progressing it as quickly as we can, because I think that's the words of the legislation for meeting the current NPS, which is still in force. We do have some views around the council table that council should stop, and there's some views around our council table that I'm detecting that we shouldn't stop doing this. And so that is something that our council needs to consider. But the current position is we're still progressing to a plan change in accordance with the law, which is as soon as practicable.
So on behalf of Raukawa, I think if the council decides they do stop for some time, no matter how long the length is, that we as part of the river iwi, especially, would need to be in that loop of whether you are or aren't, because that helps us process or progress of where we need to be with the Crown around some of the stuff. Yeah. So
And I think that's great feedback from this meeting, and that's something that we can, the team can take into account.
Yeah, that's important on any freshwater or water corridor, especially as we are one of the 5 iwi on the river itself. It's important to understand where WRC sits and where we can awhi along that way as well, and growl if we have to. Yeah. Okay. I have a question for the chairs, is that I know this is a kanui ki te kanui between governors, but is there room in here for staff to ask to speak, or except for when they've been asked to speak? Because sometimes they have more. I don't know how up to date these people have talked to the governors of, and they might have a question that I wouldn't have thought of. So I just want to know, is that something you will allow for today or not? Yeah,
That's fine with us.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, Chris, if you might want to elaborate a bit more on the different approach, I suppose, between the freshwater regulations and our PC1 work. I don't know if there's anything to just.
So just to make sure that you're asking, how does PC1 differ from what we're doing for the freshwater policy review? Isn't that right? Yeah. How does it interact? Yeah. So regarding PC1, that affects the Waikato Waipa catchment. So when we're talking about the freshwater management units that we've included in the report, that's that main area. Obviously the 8 FMUs that sit within the middle there. So when you're talking about the freshwater policy review, that's giving effect to the MPSFM 2020, as opposed to with PC1, we're looking at, older legislation there. So what the freshwater policy review is trying to achieve is obviously give effect to current legislation and to also encompass the entire regional boundary. So that's not just, the Waikato Waipa catchment, that's the entire, so that's all our regional boundary. So it's updating, so giving effect to the RMA and other legislation, the MPSFM, the NES for freshwater, all those things that we must obviously take into consideration to update our plan. And obviously the plan itself is also updating the Waikato Regional Plan and the Waikato Regional Policy Statement. So we will be inserting things like a Te Mano o Te Wai objective and long-term vision statements for the region, and those sit within the regional policy statement and give direction to the regional plan.
Thanks, Naomi. And I'll just add to it by saying my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we need to show how the NPS applies to the whole region, including the Waikato Waipa catchments. However, Te Ture Whaimana is the key guiding direction setting for the Waikato and Waipa catchments. If I just refer to the previous question, good question that was asked about, are we in this process applying the principles to the wider region? I don't think we are per se, but there are a lot of the elements of it which have been incorporated in. We are mindful, of course, another settlement that is of interest to yourselves, and the Hauraki settlement, I'm just looking, maybe some of the team behind me can help with this, That was also, we're expecting to have a catchment plan that might help give guidance to how this type of freshwater planning should go in future. But just wondering, Neville, if you, Mauri, might be able to help with that, because that would also be a guiding document if it were to come to light.
Thanks for that, Chris. Obviously, you're well aware of the role that you'll be playing when that settlement comes about. We understand it's in the queue, and we keep saying it's going to be 12 months. We've been saying it's been 12 months for about 10 years. So I'm picking 12 months to 2 years, and that settlement will finally see the light of day as an act. And as Chris says, the catchment plan that's being developed for the Coromandel Waihou Piako area does include the area of interest for Raukawa. And that plan will be significant in respect to the way it had helped guide and determine the RPS, regional policy statement, should it be deemed into the regional policy statement. So it will have a similar status to the vision and strategy Te Ture Whai Mana for the Waikato River when that occurs. There's a whole process that sits behind that, but we would expect that it would in its final form come into the RPS and be adopted by the Regional Council accordingly. Still some work to do. We're just actually in the stages now of doing some technical work with Thames Coromandel District Council on that northern part of the planning process. We would expect would start expanding that work to include the other councils, South Waikato, Matamata, Piako and Hauraki District in the very near future. We're just trying to get ourselves sorted so that we've got a strategy and an approach that would also include Raukawa members, iwi members, once we've got ourselves as councils a bit better aligned, recognising that we don't want to do too much work pre the settlement becoming clearer to us. Hopefully that's helpful information. But happy to take any questions.
Bruce?
You're right. I just wanted to give a little bit more context in relation to some of the answers and in relation to the questions that were posed by Kata in particular. So while there are some councillors who are opposed to progressing, there is also a good number of councillors who have the complete opposite view. I just wanted that known to you. Also, I would say that in the wider community, the constituency that I work within, there are definitely people who are thinking about the legislative obligations that this council has, which Chris raised. We have legal obligations under the current Act, and the 18 months of delay still requires legally, on the basis of opinions that I've seen, that we keep going. And also if some other opinions that I've already seen, if we did not keep going, there could actually be legal challenge from somewhere in the wider community. I just wanted to put that on the table because that is the situation as far as I know it. Thank you.
Just acknowledging the significant work that's taken place with the review to date. Also acknowledge the desire to continue to progress the review. We hear that. I would just like to make a point around the process, and so there has been a little bit of confusion around the process. And so I'm just making that known. We are currently trying to seek some clarity around the process that has taken place in the relationship to our JMA agreements, trying to seek that clarity. Once we have that clarity, we'll be coming back to Regional Council to have further discussions, but we are keen to see this kaupapa continued in progress. And we think the reset of time is actually a really good opportunity for us to have a quick revisit of the process and ensure that it does align with our JMA agreement.
I-
Um, oh, sorry.
Oh, take Charlie and then you can respond now.
Kia ora. I was just wanting to support the comments already made in regards to continuing with the process and extension of a deadline for the final implementation isn't the best practice to aim for that. Best practice is to get it done well within time. So definitely in support our iwi in regards to continuing with the process. In regards to comments about, I'm going to use the word best practice of freshwater management. It also makes sense for that to be applied throughout the whole region. So learnings that have come out of the result of Te Ture Whai Mana within the Waikato catchment, I would hope that best practice learnings are applied throughout the whole region.
Cool. Oh, I just wanted to acknowledge, I guess, in response to your question, that we have actually also we had a kaupapa a couple of weeks ago with Billy Bruff and yeah, where we also talked about acknowledging JMA obligations, and obviously that was a really important first discussion about the freshwater policy review and those obligations. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well, that we have started that too.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, just tautoko what Charlie just said too, and others. I mean, look, from my and Bruce kind of summed it up. Our council was always planning to roll out PC1 style plan change over the Hauraki Coromandel and then onto the West Coast, and we need to remind ourselves that the government's directives, from my perspective, I think, in effect, national bottom lines, and I'd like to think that our council, in partnership with yourselves, are well ahead of those national bottom lines. You know, they were there to drag laggard councils into line, and so yeah, no, I think both Bruce and I and many others around our council table really appreciate the support that Raukawa is providing. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Right, I'll move that the report update of the freshwater policy review and program. Have a move in. I'll move it. Peter. Oh, Robert, sorry. Glasses. Sorry, Robert. Yes, next door. All those in favour? Carried.
Got it. All right, we'll move on to item 7 of the agenda. This is on page 21 of your, no, not 21, sorry. Apologies for that. Page 31, the Golden Clam update. Sorry, Honoru? Who's speaking to this report? Oh, the next 2 papers? Oh, Honoru. Sorry. I'm not sure who I meant to go to.
I think it must be me then.
Short straw. Over to you.
Oh, kia ora tātou. So are we happy to take the Gold Clam Raukawa perspective report as read? It's a case of just provide a high level overview of some of the key points within the report. So for Raukawa, we've been working alongside MPI on the response to the Gold Clam. Obviously, particularly concerning with some of the developments of late around the Gold Clam, and also some of the signalling coming from MPI and Biosecurity New Zealand regarding funding for the Gold Clam response. And so we really bring this kaupapa to the Te Pū today to seek support and a commitment from the Waikato Regional Council in the response to the gold clam incursion. We have done a significant amount of work on the gold clam response down in Maraetai, and have been working with MPI on what a potential trial in response to that clam could look like. But we're also interested in what a regional response could look like. The concern being that currently there seems to be pockets of a response, but doesn't seem to be a regional wide response. And so we think there's an opportunity under the leadership of Waikato Regional Council alongside other river iwi to provide a regional wide response to the gold clam. I would note also we have particular concerns around some of the other catchments within our takiwa, particularly the Punu and the Waihou. And I think latest incursion in down in Taupo, which the method of that incursion is still unknown, how that incursion has come about. So we would like to explore alongside the Regional Council how we might come together to find a response. So if you're happy with that, Wini Pato, kia ora.
All right, before we move on, because I need to accept these in two different things, right? Okay, are there any just questions from committee members in relation to the Raukawa perspective of this before we move on to the WRC team? Any questions? It's clarification.
Cheers, I just wonder if it's useful to have the next paper and maybe a more joint discussion, because it's all.
Okay. We'll do that then. So your report, Patrick, is on page 33. Right.
Kia ora. Ko Patariki Waini taku ingoa. So I'm the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Manager. Sorry, we missed out. We were handing out microphones. So over to you, Brett.
Kia ora tātou, Brett Bailey, so I'm Team Leader Biosecurity.
Yeah, so with regards to this paper, so really it's take it as read, because what we've done on your behalf is ask Biosecurity New Zealand staff to provide an update to the committee. I think much of what is in that update people will already know, because there's a situation report that goes out pretty regularly. Yeah, so I just take it as read, and yeah, let's see if there's any discussion points.
Katarina.
From your perspective, and I say yours because you've been totally involved as long as can you see an end to this? Or is there going to be the perspective of WRC and iwi will be how to minimize it more than trying to obliviate it? Because it is now June 24, we first found it last year, and the lagoon in Tuwharetoa was a different species to what we found in the rest of the river. So I guess the question I'm asking is there an end to this, or a way to obliviate those claims? Or are we just trying to put into place something that makes sure that it stays in the area that it is in and doesn't start affecting other riverways within Waikato?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the immediate priority needs to be not making the situation worse. So try not to spread it anywhere else, because no one's been able to eradicate this thing from anywhere. It's landed in any country. So that's pretty. I mean, everyone probably feels the same. It's pretty hard to take. I think the new incursion that's isolated. It's in a essentially a human-made pond that we should be able to eradicate whether it's got out and got anywhere else, I don't know, but we've done a lot of testing and haven't found it anywhere else. So yeah, so in the short term, in medium term, it is to try and stop it moving anywhere else. And I think the hard thing that's going to be for everybody is it's going to get a lot worse in the river as the numbers build up. You know, so it's going to be in people's face, and that's going to be a tough thing to manage. And in parallel to that, we need to start looking at what tools we do have in case it is found early somewhere else, or we can start doing suppression trials. That has to be run in parallel, so that your medium long-term aspirations are, you know, can we do something else? Can we, like I guess we're all in that space. It's a tough thing to work through.
Trustee Griffith.
Kata, I just note on page 34, and as part of the Biodiversity New Zealand's brief, that like yourself, they've talked about containing. So I'm just wondering at what point was eradication considered, and at what point it was possibly ruled out in favour of containing, and whether the same, and how we improve responses for any future incursions, given that the new incursion is a different species, in affecting, I suppose, betterment and health of the river. Yeah.
Tough questions. I think, like, I got a phone call pretty early on, and my heart sank because I knew how bad this clam was in other countries. They didn't know, it was Biodiversity New Zealand, and no one else knew exactly the extent of the infestation. So I think the reality of the situation dawned on people very quickly. I think the aspiration was, let's see if we can do anything about it. But once you realise that it had been here for 2 or 3 years, I think the reality was pretty stark. And the technical advisory report that Anadu mentioned in his report, you know, this is a very good bit of work, and it painted a pretty sober picture as well. So formally a little bit longer, but I think everybody who knew, you know, the reality dawned pretty quickly. Oh, and sorry, the second part of your question is, with biosecurity, is you've got to move really fast. You've got to move as fast as you can, because you only get a small window of opportunity for any new thing that gets into this country. You've got to act really fast. You know, otherwise it's too expensive. They're always tricky pests that get in, because you know, they have to be pretty good to get in New Zealand in the first place. So you got to move fast.
Look, just to add to that, you know, and to address Anaru's point, I mean, there's other waterways, you know, that everyone's concerned about, and you know, there needs to be better surveillance, you know, firstly to pick these things up when they are new to New Zealand, but also around the current infestation that we've got. You know, that's something that we certainly want to work with MPI on to increase that surveillance outside of the Waikato River, so that we do pick things up early. And like Patrick said, that's, we only get one chance, and that's really early on with these sorts of invasive species. So, and those suppression trials will be really important to, you know, to get those underway and see what we can work with. Yeah, control tools at this stage fairly slim.
Just to follow up, and I think you may have slightly addressed it at the end in regards to surveillance, because my understanding is it was detected when they were doing something else. And so how do we improve our surveillance of our regional waterways to identify any future incursions of the clams, and also any other species and incursions that may inadvertently appear?
Really good point. You know, being on the money. So this is one of the things that we're wanting to talk to MPI about in a transition to long-term management. You're right, it wasn't picked up initially, you know, through any other mechanism apart from someone doing an ecological impact assessment on, I think it was the roadworks that are happening with the roundabout there at and that's the only reason it was picked up. And, you know, we've got to do better in this space. You know, I know that we copped it a little bit, that, you know, the MPI felt that we should have been trying to look for these things. New to New Zealand pests. You know, we've got to establish those roles and responsibilities. But in saying that, I completely agree that we need to set up some sort of national surveillance program in this space so that we get a better chance of finding these things early.
Yeah, thanks for both the reports, and particularly Raukawa. What I really like about your report is you dare to dream. I mean that in a rational way, though, because actually one of the problems in New Zealand is the way these problems are viewed by central government agencies. So it is a partnership between central government, regional government, and of course iwi. And the question about the resourcing level that would be required to make what I would believe is an appropriate response is really a central government issue. And there is a tendency in central government in New Zealand to focus on agricultural production problems, pests relating to that. So if you think about the expenditure on Mycoplasma bovis, and then you think about golden clam, but people who really understand the likely impacts of golden clam will know that that deserves as much expenditure because of it, particularly its potential to damage our infrastructure of the hydro system, for example. All the pump stations, all of the stuff, all the infrastructure needed to even maintain the agricultural system in the Waikato potentially is being threatened by these clams. The approach that's being taken, I agree, has to be one of containment, but you guys have dared to dream about extermination of possibly pockets in particular reaches of the river or whatever. And I encourage you to keep thinking that way and promoting that, because the bottom line is until somebody gives it a go, you can't just constantly look overseas to the international literature and say, oh, they tried and failed. The context in Aotearoa New Zealand is different, and there may be things that we can come up with that actually would work in some extermination in particular reaches of the river or on early arrival in a lake or whatever. And that's the other point about the surveillance. And I wanted to connect this discussion with our LTP process, because if you've had a look at the consultation document for the LTP, and that comes up later in our agenda, there's some additional funding being built into that LTP to be smarter and quicker about surveillance. And that is the thing we need, because again, we've been reliant on central government. Under the law, it's largely their responsibility, unwanted organisms, but we're a critical partner. And of course, if we don't do the surveillance at the regional and local scale, we'll never pick things up at the right time. So I'm hoping that LTP process is going to give us that leverage to start doing some of this more effectively. And then I've got my last question really is around in that report that Patrick's presented, there's that comment about the wash stations. I'm out of date with where have we got to, because we need a network of wash stations, and I was unclear on reading the report about where are we currently, what's the status of the wash station rollout?
Yeah, look, I think someone, Catherine, made the comment that 12 months on, we've only seen one put in place at Kirapiro since this incursion. I think Patrick will talk about the long-term management discussions that are coming up, but out of those, we're hoping to really nail down with MPI, where they're needed on a risk-based sort of, approach. I did the exercise a few weeks back between Karapiro and Port Waikato. There's 33 boat ramps. So, so you've got to be realistic about, how many wash stations can we get on boat ramps? But I think we need to sit down and look at those ones that are used frequently, and where those vessels are going, to protect the rest of our region, but and New Zealand as well. So, yes, it's a good question, but it will. Yeah, we have worked with MPI. I think they've circulated five mobile wash stations on trailers at the moment for events around the region and outside the region. But I think, there's still a lot of work to do in that space about where we're going to put these things.
Well, my comment would be we might have dodged a bullet this summer, but we may not next.
Right.
And those wash stations are critical for containment. You've got to get the
Completely.
containment infrastructure in place.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, I've got.
I think everybody needs needs a Bruce. You know, he brings the logic to why some things should happen. It's also on behalf of Raukawa, good to know that there is something in the LTP plan, but we also understand that there's more than clams who are pests and biodiversity. And for the rivers anyway, that may be one of the top 5 that is in the river. You know, I have a tono here that I'm not going to go to you guys for, but we have 2 WRA people sitting on here, and the Waikato River really belongs to WRA, and I wonder what they're. I haven't seen anything from WRA in any of these clam Waikato. So guys, are they involved, WRA, with the rest of us around how we are trying to work in clams, funding wise, blah, 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 because at the end of the day, Te Turu Whaimana is about the strategy and the vision of the Waikato River. And for us, the Waikato River is important. So just wondered. You might have a better, I won't go to those two, it's not fair.
Good questions, and I'm sure Stu will be looking at me
You got,
intently when I answer this.
don't ask Stu because he's not here for that.
No.
That's something I think you might need to go and look at outside of this meeting, but it's an avenue you might be able to look at, because the LTP plan, I don't believe, will cover everything. It'll only give you a minute amount of dollars. So hence why with MPI pulling their funding and WRC, is you're just not capable to do the work as well as you have to look elsewhere. And it's important that you do. And if you need AWHI for that, then we are happy to AWHI a support letter of some sort. Okay.
Awesome. Hey, great. You hit the nail on the head and quite a lot of points there. Well done. So one thing that's coming up, and we've been supporting Biosecurity New Zealand staff on, is a series of workshops to look at what does this thing look like long term, and there'll be people here invited to those workshops. That's really, really important because of, as Katarana has said, clams are just one of the things we're trying to manage. So what we need in place is a good surveillance program and a good framework that other pests, we pick them up fast, and you kind of already got the stuff in place, like your wash stations or the right people working together so that you can deal with it. So we need to think wider than just clams. And so that's kind of around pathway management. So we're working on it. And on the River Authority, so I have got a series of meetings with Julian coming up. I know that the River Authority are really interested to see how they can help. So we're just trying to work out, where's the niche for them to support the work. And really that long-term management planning needs to get done fast so that we can work out where we can all play and how we can all add value. Because we all need to work together. There's not one of us can do this by ourselves. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, I acknowledge Kata's kōrero, but look, happy to comment, and we've certainly had a conversation as a board as recently as, I don't know, 3 weeks ago in Taupo here, and we're very conscious that we've all got our different roles and responsibilities, and we all need to stay in our lanes, but equally, and I'm just thinking probably one of the comparisons is the koi carp thing. It's obviously not the River Authority's role to be involved in the management of these things, but obviously the impacts of this could have a significantly detrimental impact on our ability to achieve the 35 minutes. So we're really open to seeing how we can be involved in supporting a strategic sort of approach. And what that quite looks like, we don't know yet, but as Patrick said, we're really, we think we need to be part of the conversation. Also acknowledge that we have struggled big time with being kept in the communications loop as well. As as we hear, and I don't know if it's the same for Raukawa, but immensely frustrating. And I actually went to a meeting, a watershed meeting in Te Kuiti a few weeks ago, and Andrew Hoggard was there, who I think is the Minister of Biosecurity, and I made it pretty clear to him. His comment to me was, we acknowledge the comms are completely inadequate and he's looking to address that, but he also made a comment that he thinks the decisions that MPI have made to date have been appropriate. I'm not so sure if we share that view or not, but it's.
Are we on the record?
Look, we were open up front that it wasn't fast enough. You know, we were very open about that.
Councillor Cookson.
Patrick, the testing to know if these outside excursions are in our water, is that DNA tested or how's that? What's the quickest way of picking it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, for these it is. I mean, eDNA technology has come a long way, and we're learning a lot from it. And that's why we're sitting here going, well, nationally, locally, we can probably do a lot more with that. With the eDNA to pick these things up earlier.
So the question would be that is MPI working with us to make a database of that DNA that we can pick up these really quickly? Then when we're doing normal water testing out there in the rivers and waterways, that DNA could be tested immediately and we could find these excursions years before it gets to the situation where we're at the moment.
That's what we're trying to work towards. Yep. It's challenging in the fact that when you look at the number of freshwater invasive species out there, there's a lot. So what MPI are attempting to do is trying to do some risk analysis around which ones are likely to get here, and then we'll hopefully get the markers for those, and then exactly what you're saying.
No, what I'd like to actually see is what the markers of our native ones are, and then if it's anything outside of that, that's when we got an issue.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, we've got the markers for native species already, but it's when we talk about invasive species, we have to have those markers available in order to pick.
That's right, but you'd already get the test to say there's something that's not meant to be there is there.
No,
you
doesn't work like that.
Okay.
No,
I just want to understand that. That's what it's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Brett for his sins is on a national working group looking at this. So
no, it's good.
It's quite good. No, it's good.
Totally agree.
Trustee Griffith.
Yeah, I just wanted to point again to Biosecurity New Zealand's response to the question, and also in support of Drew's comments earlier. You'll note who they're in partnership with, and you'll note that there is an important name missing there. I think that says a lot, and reiterates where communication has been an issue. So that's the first bullet point on their brief that was written only but a few days ago. Just bring that to your.
Any other comments? Anything you'd like to say in closing? No?
But my last comment, guys, would be around, I know this is about claims, but, and unfortunately, we only meet twice a year. But I do like to ensure that WRC around their biodiversity is on par with Raukawa, especially around our waterways and our tributaries into that. And anything else that's got to do with biodiversity and whatever, I don't see what relationship we actually have one-on-one around that. Either we talk more often to you around it because, that there's just more than the Clam and our lands and stuff. So I really would like to see what that relationship between Raukawa and your group, Patrick, to help us look at the wider picture of that. Kapai?
Good.
Yes, Councillor Cookson.
Yeah, actually, really good discussion, Catarina. And like next month, the Clam and other biosecurity issues are coming up in ICM. And those findings most probably should be shared because it's public anyway. So we should share with those what's going on, that you're not waiting 6 months for the next. You could actually start sharing what's going on in the ICM meetings with you. It may not be any more than what you already know, but at least we're talking about it as well. Does that make sense? Yeah, Thank you.
All right. Do I have a mover to accept the report? Oh, and we're doing these jointly, so we're accepting both the Raukawa perspective as well as the update that's been provided by WRC. So, so I keep calling you guys trustees. You are all trustees, right? Is that the correct term to refer to trustees? Trustee Oxum, are you happy to move? And second, Counselor, or sorry, Trustee Griffiths. All those in favor? Opposed? Sweet. Carried. Sweet doesn't actually translate to carried, so we'll we'll use the official nomenclature. All right.
Long-term plan, page 36, I believe. Jane Epperly. Thank you, Jane.
Kia ora tātou. I'm Jane Appley. I'm Acting Manager of Corporate Planning and just providing an update on Council's long-term plan. Since our previous conversation on this topic, Council met in January and February of this year and confirmed a draft long-term plan budget to be taken out to the community. The draft budget would have an overall increase to current ratepayers of 6% in year 1, 8% in year 2, and 3% in year 3. Through this process, Council identified a focus of resilience in the LTP and looking at building the resilience of our regional environment over the next 3 years. This included making provision for some strategic investments. As noted in the earlier conversation, there's a provision for stepping up pest management. Also includes developing a strategy for water security in the region, investing further in understanding our coastal and marine areas, further work in peat research, investing in regional spatial planning, Raukawa Coast, and improving Whangamarino wetland and Lake Waikato. Council also identified 5 specific proposals to seek communities' views on through the consultation, and a summary of each of those proposals is provided in the report, so I won't labour over those too much further. Throughout the month of April, we had our formal consultation with the community where we had over 800 different groups or individuals provide submission points. And Council will have public hearings next week from the 14th till 17th of May, and we'll make decisions giving consideration to all of the feedback that's been received through the process at deliberation meetings held on the 27th to 29th and 31st of May. Final LTP will be adopted on the 25th of June. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, kia ora, Jane. Look, I don't look at me as a councillor today. I'm totally Raukawa. So around the long-term plan and for Raukawa is some of the things in here is good. The increasing of the national heritage rate, that's good. What is not good around that is the understanding from the Raukawa perspective. What is that? Because I don't think them as an entity has applied to this funding. So it probably needs a little bit more, not today, understanding of what that means and how they may be able to apply for that funding. The second proposal you have here of collecting the regional rate for public transport, for me and South Waikato, that is absolutely not good enough because we don't have public transport to the consistency that other towns have. We are rural, and even as a council, I'm always complaining about rural and public transport. We have to fight for the fight that we get already, so that probably may not sit so well, except for those people who live outside South Waikato, because we do have a lot of Raukawa people who live outside Waikato. South Waikato, okay? So that in itself is probably a problem. We need to have a very better look at that within Raukawa. The other one is that the discontinuing of the Regional Development Fund. Once again, for Raukawa, they probably have never applied, so they probably don't know what that means anyway. So I guess I'm looking at your long-term plan and the whole stuff that what you put in here probably doesn't suit us at this time because it's not something that we are affected by, except for the two things I've mentioned, and funding of Te Waka. Well, this is another me talking as Raukawa, is that we need to, as an economic place, I guess, I'm not sure where Te Waka has done a lot of work in South Waikato. They may have been working with the district council, I don't know. I certainly don't know whether they've been working with Raukawa because I haven't seen them in the 3 years I've been chair there, talking with us around that. So that's interesting for Raukawa to understand what that means. And of course, the last one is the funding for primary industry compliance. Policy change, funding. So how this affects Raukawa and the mahi that WRC does. So at the end of the day, all of the long-term plans is what affects Raukawa as that entity and how we can awhi WRC going forward. Now, the team has said in their short paper is that they don't have any major concerns with the long-term plan. And that'll be because, like I said, they don't quite know what the headings are about. And that's not your fault. That's maybe the fault of the short time span that the LTP's been out for us to get an understanding about. Considering it's a 10-year plan, so I guess I'm complaining on behalf of Raukawa that this is so fast. We may not, I don't even know if you came to us anyway to have that discussion around what the long-term plan looks like going forward for Raukawa. So I just thought I'd put it on the table, let you know that there are some things in there that really doesn't gel with Raukawa, especially what's in your paper, not what's in long-term plan. Yeah, just thought I'd let you know.
Thank you. I'm happy to provide, obviously, there is further information that can be shared with the Trust on the Natural Heritage Rate and how that fund can be accessed in the future. Our proposal will be on that topic to lift the level of funding to that. So that will provide more funding for community groups to carry out restoration work and biodiversity. But happy for further information to be shared on how that process works. In regards to public transport, I think it's important to consider that the proposal is in the first phase to establish a regional rating for public transport. But we acknowledge that further work is required in terms of consulting with lots of communities around what that should look like. The purpose of having a regional rating is so that we can kind of take on board all of the different requirements and have a more efficient public transport system across the region. But do understand there's very different and diverse transport needs in different parts of the region. Yeah, and happy to continue conversations on those other topics.
It'd be great if you have something to put together for us to read around applying for the Heritage Natural Fund, because one of the things I was talking to one of our other members about is that it's not widely known It's the people who keep applying for this have done it before, they've got it down pat, they know how to do that. But there's a whole lot of new people that could be doing this, but they're not quite sure what it means. So your website might say blah, 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 but hey, for a layman, that doesn't mean a damn thing. So in other words, I guess it'd be great if you went to our ropu, you know, and with a bit of a pamphlet to say, this is what it is, this is how you apply, and if you need help, ring 800, blah, blah, blah. So can we do that?
Yeah, thank you for the
Can
feedback.
we,
Excellent.
can we create an action point around that?
I know, I wanted yesterday. Okay, the rest, Charlie.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that you raise a really important point, Katarina, around raising this committee's awareness around the different avenues for funding. And so regardless of the outcome of the LTP discussion in relation to the natural heritage rate, there are a number of funding avenues. Madam Co-Chair, I think it would be beneficial to have an agenda item where there's a presentation around the different funds, the types of programs that have been funded, what the application process looks like, just so that committee members are aware of it and can share that a bit broader.
Councillor?
Oh, kia ora. Just in regards to, I think, proposal 1 and proposal 2 in particular. So increasing natural heritage rate, from a Raukawa perspective, any further rating on our people is obviously going to be difficult for our people to be able to maintain, and that goes across both of those. But in particular, I just want to draw everyone's attention to, in regards to natural heritage and biodiversity, in the SNA debates that happened not so long ago, and proposed areas of the SNAs, you would see a number of those areas are actually on Māori whenua. So from in this region, all the iwi, and of course we're one Raukawa. So could be a perspective that we're already doing that, and now we're going to be rated on it as well. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing is in regards to, again, the rate for public transport. I know that, I think it's paragraph 19 or sentence 19, around it being, this proposal being cost neutral. So I'm just wanting to seek clarification. Is that cost neutral for the ratepayers or cost neutral for the council? Because that's two different things. And I looked on the census last night and looked at our biggest area within South Waikato being Tokoroa, and compared the mean income for households in Tokoroa versus Hamilton, and there is a $10,000 deficit for Tokoroa. And so that's of concern, of course, to us as Raukawa. It's a concern to everyone, increase in rates, but in particular in regards to the area where we have our stronghold. So just wanted to raise that as well. Get it?
Yeah. Thank you. So the wording around cost neutral, does apply to the ratepayer in principle. So currently, all ratepayers in the Waikato do pay rates for public transport to their district councils. These are currently then invoiced to regional council who administer the services. So it's taking that step out of the process. However, as it's currently district councils rate through the general rate, so you won't have that visibility that you are being rated for public transport. The intent would be that were regional council to take over that responsibility, your general rate to your district council would be reduced, yeah, to the same amount.
Any other questions?
I was just going to say, someone should clarify that, put it all around the SNA and the natural heritage rate as well, two different things. Yeah. And it's we do the I guess the groundwork, the work that underpins the identification of SNAs. It's the district councils that actually identify them and et cetera, and manage them. Yeah.
Just because it was noted that you do the work underpinning the SNAs, just point out from, I suppose, our Raukawa iwi people perspective, that there was an obvious missing link in regards to some of the assessments that were made. One is that lands have been identified as not having protection. I don't think whoever did the work looked at Māori land court orders and deeds, because there were reservations which were protected through the trust deeds and through the Māori land court, and that was not noted at all in regards to that there were protections on some of those lands that were already in place under that mechanism.
Just a bit of additional context, and I was looking back to see if we had any staff members who are an expert on this in the room, but I don't know that we do. So my understanding is that WRC, sorry? Oh, kia ora, Julie. All right, you can correct me if I'm going to get any of this wrong, so be on standby. So WRC had some of the systems, some of the LiDAR, some of the mapping that could do the initial identification of here might be a significant natural area. It wasn't us commenting on the validity of that. It was just looking at our systems and saying, here are districts, here's a place you might want to look. The onus fell on the district councils to go out and ground truth it, established who owned it, established what protections were already in place. That was their job. And most people don't understand that intersect. So I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that. It was just about a clarification. Rhoda.
In terms of the Māori Land Court question and the reservations, that's actually a very good question that we'll follow up on that, because I'm not sure that that was actually looked at when we did the desktop SNA analysis. So that's something that we'll go back and have a look at, because it's a really important point.
Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, so I might shed a little bit of light on this as well. Having been involved in SNAs across the whole of the North Island for the last 30 years or so. The application of the SNA delineation and identification is a district council responsibility, but the regional council is involved in setting some of the criteria that need to be considered in making the decision. Having said that, the district plan also requires other layers of information to be included in the plan. And my suggestion to you is, and I know that discussion that you're talking about did occur in a number of district councils, Otorohanga and others, where the other layer in the data set led to discussions around the points that you're making. So the SNA process is largely focused on the ecosystems and the native plants and animals. Other layers focus on different values and significance assessments of a different style. And they all need to be brought together if an appropriate decision is going to be made. Unfortunately, sometimes the layers don't talk to each other, or the people involved in just finding the answers to the different layers don't talk to each other. And I would also say that much of the problem with the SNA process around some councils in the North Island of New Zealand was to do with the fact that they did what are called desktop surveys, and sometimes didn't even do the ground truthing, and then went out to the community and iwi and had discussions. And they were also, in some cases, I need to be careful about what I say here, in some cases their communication methods were actually appalling. So they sent letters out to landowners, which immediately caused landowners to say, how dare you, you know? And rightly so, because the thing about significant natural areas is they are all on either Maori land or private land of some sort. And they are incredibly important for the future and survival and persistence of New Zealand's native plants and animals. But that does not let you off the hook in terms of the way you communicate with landowners. And it also doesn't let you off the hook in giving directions which cut across your private rights, your public and private rights. And this is why in the updated version of the National Policy Statement on Indigenous Biodiversity, there was some new provisions made for the way Maori land would be approached. Unfortunately, that also now is under review. But the point I wanted to make is sometimes the process isn't done well, but the purpose and the principle behind it, I think, is very important.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other kōrero?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the constituent councillor for Waihou, I've actually I put a lot of effort into building a relationship with your mayor, Gary Petley, I think that's right. And we talk every 2 to 3 weeks. There's things that we talked about Whakatahi the other day, and most probably your point, I don't know if it's your point of view as well, but he believed it's Hamilton centric. It's not a lot of effort goes into the South Waikato for economic development out of it. So I made it clear the other day that that's I call them my Eastern TAs, have difficulty with some of these things. So we are representing you, your TAs, that I put that point of view out there. But yeah, I think that transport one, you should have had that discussion with Gary really early on, because that's where it has to come from to get to us. So Gary, is your point that you got to, well, that's how I see it anyway. I had that discussion about Hauraki the other day, what Hauraki wants for transport, and the direction of where council's taking that transport point of view came from Hauraki, not from us as constituent, bringing your ideas to us as constituent councillors. It was actually Hauraki drove it. So I'd advise you, if you want a different transport system, you've got to get your TA to drive it to us. Yeah. But anyway, I'm willing to help out in that discussion anytime you want me to come down there and have a talk, because I am your constituent councillor for that as well. So, but thank you.
Yeah, so the only reason we brought it up is because it's in the paper. But wouldn't have bothered it if it wasn't there. So hence why I said the topics that you brought up in here are kind of contentious to the whole of the long-term plan. And I was giving you a view from the Raukawa's point of view. But I delivered the long-term plan as a councillor to South Waikato. And their views are not anything like ours. But I just thought I'd let you know. If it wasn't in the paper, I wouldn't have brought it up.
Any other questions?
Oh, good. I'll move it. The report, I mean.
The report draft, mover, seconder. Cookson, all in favour? Against? Carried.
Thanks, no.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
Hey, sorry. You want to drive with these glasses on?
All right. All right, committee members, we're now on to item 10. It's actually item
9. Is that
10
page 42
on the agenda,
Okay.
which is the fast track approvals bill, final submission, and we are joined by Katrina
39.
Andrews. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou, ko Katrina Andrews toku ingoa. I'm a policy advisor in the strategic and spatial planning team. So this item relates to the fast track approvals bill and Waikato Regional Council's submission to the bill. The report on the agenda describes the key features of the bill and implications for both the council and Raukawa. This report was authored by Mark Brocklesby in our Resource Use Directorate in March, before the WRC submission on the bill was finalised, and notes that staff will provide an update and summary of WRC's submission today. So this morning I'd like to take the report as read and instead largely focus on providing a summary of WRC's submission, if that's okay with the co-chairs. So the Fast Track Approvals Bill was introduced to Parliament on the 7th of March. Submissions closed on the 19th of April. The draft WRC submission was shared with Raukawa staff after the operational hui in mid-April. The submission was lodged on the 18th of April following a submission subcommittee. However, there weren't any substantial changes to the content of the submission from the draft that was shared. Overall, while the Council's submission supports the intention and acknowledges the economic benefits of simplified consenting pathways, it sets out a number of concerns with the bill and recommendations to improve the workability, clarity and certainty for those using and providing input to the fast track process. The submission focuses on the Council's obligations in terms of serving its community and managing impacts on the environment. It highlights potential unintended and expensive consequences of the bill in its current form, using examples relevant to WRC and its community. So in terms of overall comments on the purpose and process proposed within the bill, the submission recommends a sunset clause be included to make the fast track process temporary, while wider resource management reform is undertaken, including consideration of spatial planning. Suggests a rebalancing of the purpose of the bill to reflect the need to fast track the approvals process for significant projects while not compromising the environment. Recommends that the list of projects proposed to be included in Schedule 2 be released for public consultation during the Select Committee process. Seeks extensions to the timeframes in the bill for local authority comment, and opposes the limitation on appeal rights for decisions made under the bill. Another key theme within the submission is cost recovery for both local authorities and iwi and hapu. The submission recommends that the cost recovery provisions in the bill need to be extended to include all reasonable costs incurred by councils and iwi and hapu in participating in fast track processes, and enable costs to be recovered via the EPA rather than directly from the applicant, as the wording of the bill currently proposes. Regarding decision-making powers, the submission recommends that final decisions on approvals, including the setting of consent conditions, should be made by the expert panel rather than the joint ministers. If ministers are to remain the sole decision makers, the submission suggests the bill should at least require the ministers to prepare disclosure statements and include the Minister for the Environment as a joint minister. The submission also seeks certainty that comments provided by local authorities will be effectively considered, and for expert panels to be required to include expertise on economic analysis and resource management. Regarding decision-making criteria and eligibility of projects, the submission recommends Clause 17 be strengthened to ensure a more balanced consideration of economic and environmental matters, and that at a minimum, the ministers must consider the matters listed in Clause 17.3. This includes climate change and natural hazards, consistency with local and regional planning documents, including spatial strategies, and significant environmental issues. The submission also seeks that prohibited activities be listed as ineligible for fast track. Other key examples where the submission suggests the bill needs strengthening relate to geothermal management, climate change and natural hazards, impacts on council assets, infrastructure and servicing, and allocation of resources, particularly water allocation. Specifically regarding Te Ture Whaimana, the submission supports the inclusion of Te Ture Whaimana in the bill, however recommends the section should be explicit that any decisions made under the bill shall not be inconsistent with Te Ture Whaimana. It also seeks that an assessment against Te Ture Whaimana should be required for projects located within the relevant area. The council will be presenting an oral submission to the Environment Committee once that's been scheduled. And just in terms of other updates, I also note that applications to have projects listed in Schedule 2 of the bill closed last Friday, the 3rd of May. At this stage, we don't have a list of what projects have been applied for in the Waikato region. So that brings me to the end of my summary. I'm happy to answer any questions. We do also have Lisette Balsam, Manager of Strategic Policy Implementation, with us online. Lisette was involved in preparing the submission, so can also assist with answering any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that summary, and thanks, Lisette, for joining us online. Katrina.
Good morning. Thank you for the report. A couple of things in here that I'd like to bring to your attention, or to whoever intentions I need to bring it to who wrote this. First and foremost is there's 2 areas in here that's got implications for both Raukawa Charitable Trust and WRC. That would have been really great if we had the conversation before we read it in the paper. I mean, the last thing we want to see as anybody or any entity is, oh, there's an implication to something, but you're not going to know about it until you read it. So it would be really good at some stage that you spoke to our team about what you believe, and I say you as WRC, is an implication to the iwi. And saying all of that, we do have to do our own stuff anyway, but on top of that, because you guys are the brotherhood to the Crown, it would have been really good to have sat down and have a really good conversation around what you believed are implications for Raukawa. So it's sad for me to read it in here and not be able to speak to my team about it. The other thing, and also the key implications for WRC. How can we awhi WRC if we don't know what that means? And at the end of the day, whatever implicates you guys have to implicate us. You know, because some of the main important fast tracking bills is going to impact on our treaty claims, whether the Crown says it's not or not. We believe there is a slight piece in there that could implicate our treaty claims. Okay, and of course it says in here in one of your bullet points is the matters which must be considered include iwi management plans. But who's going to do that? Are you trying to say that the Crown's fast tracking consortium is going to be looking at that? Or are you saying that WRC has an input into how that might work? So I guess what I'm saying, Katrina, is that good paper, thank you for it. We are working really hard to understand that as an iwi, but it would have been so much easier for Raukawa if we understood what you believed was the implications to us going forward. What else have I got there? Of course, we have to do our submissions anyway, so thank you. Just thought I'll let you know.
Yeah, no, thank you.
We are, as a Raukawa chair, it's really hard for me to accept that, oh, blah, 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 when I haven't been involved in any conversation, whether it's this or whatever. Okay.
I think you raised some really important points there, Katarina, because whether we're talking about this bill or we're talking about things like our long-term plan, what I'm hearing from you is that if there are implications that we can see as WRC, it's better to have the conversation early so that you guys are aware of it, so that we can support you and your organization. Yes, you are correct. You make your own submissions, but our submissions are jointly and severably richer if we have the conversations before they close. Anaru.
Tēnā koe, Katrina. So yeah, we share similar concerns around the proposed bill, and we have made a submission. And just further to Katarina's comment around the sharing of information and the sharing of concerns, we are doing that in a number of different spaces where we work with other organisations who raise those concerns. Although I do appreciate the the timeframes around the submission was considerably tight, and so appreciate that there is difficulties around that. However, as has been pointed out by Pamela, it certainly helps to understand where other organisations are standing on that. So yeah, and I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities to have conversations like this moving forward, and just encourage you to reach out to myself and the team so we can understand the position of regional council moving forward. I would, if I may, just ask Ashanti Neems, who's our national manager on policy space, if she wanted to talk to our submission and some of the key points within our submission. So, kia ora.
Tēnā koe, and thank you, Katrina, for.
Can I just get you, just because Lizette's online, if I can get you to move the whole base of that microphone a bit closer to you, just means that you'll be understood online.
Thank you so much for the paper, and obviously tautoko the comments made already by our rangatira. And so I'll take the opportunity just to give a really quick summary around some of our key submission points, as well as set that's on the line. So we noted within our agree with the majority of the submission points from WRC, and obviously we steered away from a lot of the technical aspects of the bill, but the key components for Raukawa noted the Schedule 2 projects, parts A and B, and asked for those projects to actually be removed from the bill itself, rather than have them out for public consultation prior to the bill being read into the House. And we also sought, and again, probably the real heart of our submission, spoke to the lack of protection for the Raukawa interests in our settlements. Even though it mentions that it will uphold the settlement, we believe that the bill in its current design really fails to do that. It doesn't reflect our relationship principles with the Crown as a treaty partner, and you'd note that it only reflects on upholding the settlement. And if you're familiar with our settlement, it is really built around those relationship principles. So there's a reliance on our treaty settlement obligations, and we believe there's a bit of a misunderstanding in regards to the nature of the obligations that the Crown must provide us, and the current bill offers little protection of those obligations. Also, obviously, the inconsistent mentioning of treaty principles. So in the actual heart of the bill, there's no reference to treaty principles, but reflecting through the actual schedules, there are nuances of the treaty principles being mentioned. So there's just that inconsistency there. And obviously what we're seeking is those for the joint ministers to actually give effect to the te tiriti and those principles within the bill. And we also noted the powers of joint ministers and how inappropriate they are in regard to the consenting process. And we also agree that those decision-making powers should come back to the technical and expert panel that's been provided. And finally, we did note te ture whaimana and the inconsistencies that the bill. Yes, we appreciate that it has mentioned te ture whaimana within the bill, and also acknowledges our treaty settlement within the bill itself. But again, there's the inconsistency around the policy direction, and that being the supremacy direction setting document there's just a bit of a misalignment there. So, and all that was the heart of our submission. But I do tautoko our rangatiras kōrero happy at any stage to really engage early as part of our JMA relationship, to engage early and have the conversations, and looking forward to exploring opportunities in regards to fast tracking. How can we work together with Raukawa and WRC to, as we know, it's going to be a very fast process when they come on board. So how can we work in partnership to ensure that we are protecting the interest across both our communities? Tēnā koe.
Through you, Madam Chairs, thank you for that overview. Really appreciate hearing your thoughts, and definitely take on board your comments about those early discussions and how we can work together in this process going forward. So thank you.
Thank you for briefing the whole committee on those viewpoints. That's really helpful for all of us. Lizette, did you want to make a comment? with your fabulous artistic background there. Loving
Local
it.
Waikato artwork, yes. Kia ora
Nice.
koutou. It's certainly our intention to share submissions as soon as we can, or our early thinking. So we're very supportive and very encouraged that of everybody's keen interest to work together. So thank you very much. And I had no further comment.
All right, any other comments? If not, do I have a mover for the report? Councillor Kneebone, second. Councillor Clarkson, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Waikato Biodiversity Accord, page 43. We have Judy. Kia ora, Judy.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Judy Van Rossen tōku ingoa o Horana, whakapaparanga mai. Engari ko Tamaki Makaurau te whenua tūpū, ke Tamaheri o e noho ana, he kai tohu tohu kaupapaheri taio aho I te konahira arohe o Waikato. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Judy.
So, morning, my name is Judy Van Rossen and I work in the policy implementation team as a specialist policy advisor, and the specialist part is biodiversity. So this report just provides an update on the progress of the Waikato Biodiversity Accord. So Council is leading a Waikato Biodiversity Accord process with those key partners and stakeholders who have responsibilities for managing the biodiversity taonga of the region. So the Accord is the first step that lays the foundation for how we will work together better, have more joined up thinking whilst respecting each other's roles and responsibilities, and how we can collectively improve the state of our region's ever dwindling biodiversity resource. We have got a draft of the Accord that's attached to the paper in the agenda. It's in the form of a simple, high-level, voluntary and non-statutory agreement with a purpose statement, a set of principles and objectives, and a statement of commitment. So following on from the Accord will be the development of a regional biodiversity strategy that will lay out a long-term vision for biodiversity and how we can contribute to that vision. This strategy is actually a statutory requirement that the Regional Council has to develop under the National Policy Statement for Biodiversity, as it is at the moment. So it's essentially a community and stakeholder-driven plan for restoring biodiversity at a landscape scale. The Accord and the strategy are goals in our Council's strategic direction, and they're also a key implementation tool for our regional policy statement. We are seeking a commitment from the Department of Conservation, Ministry for Primary Industries, the QE2 National Trust, key iwi partners and all the territorial authorities to be signatories to the Accord, to work together and to build partnerships and develop a biodiversity strategy for the region. So the Accord's like the first step in that process. So I'll just talk briefly about the process that we've gone through so far. So we started the process in September by carrying out some targeted reporting to co-governance hui. Unfortunately, because Raukawa didn't have any co-governance meetings last year, we didn't get to you. We then engaged with the proposed Accord partners at the staff level and held two wānanga, one in December and one in February. The first workshop was to gather ideas for the content, mainly around the principles of working together. We also looked at examples of other accords, such as the Waipa Peat Lakes and Wetlands Accord, and other biodiversity accords that have been developed in other regions, like Hawke's Bay and Taranaki. We then put this kaupapa into a draft document and circulated that for feedback at the second workshop. So we've been engaging again with our JMA partners, so this is one of those meetings. And also we've received further comments from all of the territorial authorities, as well as presenting to their governance meetings. And so they are happening throughout May and also into early June. So the draft that you have here is being further refined with the feedback that we have been receiving. So it's a bit of a tricky process because we've got a early draft that we had to get onto the agenda for this meeting, but at the same time we're still doing gathering feedback and refining that draft. So we've just to give you an idea of that sort of feedback. So we have adjusted some of the wording to align it more with what's in the national policy statement and the regional policy statement. And our Tauranga Whenua unit has provided a whakatauki for each of the principles. So you won't see that in the draft you have there, but that's what we're looking at the moment. We're also putting together a companion document that explains the context and the rationale for the accord. So once we've completed all of those engagement meetings, we'll then circulate a final draft so that we can check on the wording and the appropriateness. We're looking to finalise the accord and take it to our council in the next little while, probably the next couple of months. So while this is happening, we're also starting to plan the process and analyse the requirements that we need to have for the regional biodiversity strategy. So the strategy itself will be a lot more detailed. We'll do wider engagement with other stakeholders such as community groups and industry groups, local iwi and hapu where they are willing to be involved and have that capacity to ensure that we capture a wide range of views. So that strategy is the thing that will have the agreed actions, the milestones and the methods for restoring biodiversity. The time frame for that is that we would like to complete a draft of that strategy in time for the next long-term plan rounds. So that's in 2026-27, because that will be an important step to implement the strategy in terms of getting the resourcing in place. And then after that's been developed, we see the accord as enduring beyond the strategy. So it'll be the basis for having those regular meetings and communications between the signatory parties to monitor and demonstrate progress with how the strategy is being implemented. So I think that's the end of my explanation and summary, so I'm happy to answer any parte.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Judy. I don't know if you know or not, and this is not a Raukawa thing, this is the fact that Bobby sits over there and he's calling for an hour of his ICM meeting to do some korero around biodiversity. What I'm trying to look at is where does this fit, the accord, fit into that conversation that's happening. So, you know, we just had a conversation with the two guys, Patrick and Brett, about clams.
Mm-hmm.
And then I brought up the conversation about biodiversity. There's a gap. There seems to be a gap between what those two guys do on the ground, what we've been talking about, and your accord. You know, so somewhere along the line, I know it's voluntary and everything, it has to come to an overall input of both WRC and everybody else. Because, you know, we do quite some work with the two men that were here before, Patrick and Brett. We don't do it to the accord, for crying out loud. You know, even though it's in a draft form, we just do it because it's important for us to do. So, you know, what restraints is that accord going to put on us to do the work anyway? Is it going to highlight what we do? Is it going to put a restraint on what we do? Because at the end of the day, if that's the case of being restrained, I don't want Raukawa to be involved, because biodiversity is important for all of our area, and we are big takiwa, you know, and if the accord is what's going to pull us together to do some work, then I'm sorry, we'll be working way beyond your accord. Judy.
Okay.
That's not what you want to hear, but hey, bloody hell.
So the accord it's like the basis for us, how we're going to work together and how we're going to put together a strategy that has some priorities and actions around restoring biodiversity. So we see that the accord is going to have those links to our RMA plans, to the district plans, to our Waikato biosecurity strategy. So the regional, we have a biosecurity strategy. and also our regional pest management plan and other documents. So pulling those together and having those links between those documents, and also being able to get our JMA partners and those other organisations like DOC and MPI and the territorial authorities who've got a huge role to play in biodiversity management together to develop those actions. And to get them around the table to communicate and, work together. It's a big task, I recognise that. The regional biodiversity strategy is, as a statutory requirement in the MPSIB, has a 10-year timeframe. So they're saying you could take 10 years to do a strategy, which we feel is far too long. I don't think anyone wants to wait that long to develop a strategy. So we are keen to get this started, and we feel that the accord process is the first step to get those parties in the room together or at Hui together to look at some of those priorities, whether it's golden clams, significant natural areas, or what it might be.
Thank you, Judy.
Ka pai. Thanks, Judy. Hui is great, but at the end of the day, we and WRC, it's the doing that makes it worthwhile. And if we are going to be stopping the doing because the accord hasn't quite got to its starting date, then it's a hindrance. So good luck. We'll awhi where we can. But at the end of the day, I guess I'm signalling that Rika will continue doing what we need to do to ensure our biodiversity, our biosecurity is not being lost while we're waiting for this draft to be put together.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, so I will speak to the Biodiversity Accord in strong support on the basis of what I've learned from being involved in a previous Biodiversity Accord in Taranaki. So the Taranaki Biodiversity Accord has been in operation since 2012, and it's really a vehicle for what you would call collective impact. It's a vehicle for understanding who's doing what and who's not doing what. It's about not stepping on other people's toes, but understanding which bits everybody contributes to get a collective outcome. And that's the important thing about it. And you know what? I have to refer to the most amazing result that came out of the Taranaki Biodiversity Accord quite late in the process, only 2 years ago, because of the collective work of all of the, I think it's 11 iwi in Taranaki who signed on, and the Department of Conservation and the Taranaki Regional Council. So in Te Papakura o Taranaki, the new name for what was formerly known as Egmont National Park, the last goat was removed from that national park because of the collective action of all of those parties. So the old Department of Lands and Survey and the early stages of DOC from 1987 right through to they'd been working on that all that time and not achieved it. Why had they not achieved it? Because they didn't have all the right people in the room. Because in order to exterminate goats in the national park, you had to get all of the landowners who were farming outside the national park on board. You had to get all of the communities outside the national park on board. You had to get every sector of the national park and every iwi that was connected to that national park on board to a collective approach. And the last goat is gone. So that national park now has this amazing recovery going on in the native forest and the wetlands and all of that stuff, because it now has no goats, no deer, and no pigs, but it also has intensive control of everything else, like possums, rats, stoats, the whole lot, but not done in isolation by one group, done because they all came together. So, for example, the possums have to cross the wall of death on the farmland around the national park before they can even get into the national park. Same goes for the rats and the stoats and the weasels and everything else. I'm a massive supporter of accords because they are the first step of the stitching together of the relationships that are needed to truly get collective impact and reverse biodiversity decline. Thank you.
Bruce, can I ask just a question? How long did it take to get that collective approach?
Yeah, so it took something of the order of 2 to 3 years of discussion. I remember it took so long that there was more, I think there were 3 different conservation ministers involved. That was, I must admit, because one of them lost their job for something that I've forgotten about that. Anyway, there was at least 3 conservation ministers involved. There were at least a cycle of 3 years of discussion. And unfortunately, I absolutely accept your point, Cutter, about the DUI. But if you don't do the right stuff at the start and get the relationships sorted, but also understand whose responsibility is which bit. It's not about taking responsibility away from anybody. It's about getting the right people to take responsibility to all the pieces in the jigsaw puzzle that will lead to the result that you're looking for. So yeah, you're looking at least 2 or 3 years, I say, before the accord will actually start operating.
You added to your timeline. Another.
Tēnā koe, Judy, for that report. And just acknowledge Bruce, the mahi down in Taranaki. We were privileged enough a couple of years ago to go down and visit alongside the iwi, see firsthand some of the results that have been achieved through that collective approach. And yeah, it was really interesting hearing the journey the iwi had been on, and also the sense of achievement that had come through that work as well. So it was a really inspiring and exciting conversation for us to be part of. With regards to the report, Judy, I might just pass it over, if I can, to our biodiversity expert down the end, Andrea Julian, so who may want to share some thoughts. Hopefully she does. Otherwise, I don't know.
Thank you, Anaru. Always has something to say. Yes, we were very impressed going down and looking at the results of the Accord in Taranaki. So we are interested in participating, you know, absolutely take on board what Katarina is saying about we don't want to hold things up. And certainly one of our reports is bringing something to you that we think we don't want held up in the meantime. But one of the things that I think needs to be really closely looked at in the Biodiversity Accord is the burden of responsibility that sometimes is put on people who, you know, have a limited wherewithal to actually undertake the kind of mahi that needs to be taken to maintain biodiversity. When you have like a lot of Mauri land, you'll find a lot of that tends to be in hill country, tends to have existing or regenerating Indigenous vegetation on it. And I would be very keen to see, to make sure that the people who are in that situation have got support, the support that rather than having the expectations placed on them or limitations placed on them. Some of the, I think, reasonably low-hanging fruit are things like making sure that the emissions trading scheme is fit for purpose and includes the sorts of circumstances we're talking about, where when you're focusing on riparian revegetation, when you're focusing on allowing natural revegetation, natural regeneration of vegetation, which I'm sure Professor Clarkson will agree is a pretty good way of actually getting Indigenous vegetation and habitat reinstated. Like making sure that those are included and that there's a really easy pathway for whānau to be looking to see if the emissions trading scheme might be something they could be participating in. Having that sort of thing included within the Biodiversity Accord too, because it is about habitat maintenance really. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on habitat maintenance, and we're really keen to bring that kind of perspective to the table as well. And I was very happy to be involved in the first workshop that you ran, and I just could not make the second one because of some clashes, but we are very interested in being involved and working with you to ensure that that perspective is brought into play. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I think certainly one of the things that is we're very keen to see in the Accord and in the strategy is looking at those varying incentives for maintaining existing habitat, and also things like, the biodiversity credits and emissions trading scheme as well. So those things will be looked at really closely. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Judy. No other kōrero? Thank you for your time. I have a move and second that the report Waikato Biodiversity. Seconder. Councillor Clarkson. Aye. All in favour?
Aye.
Carry. Against?
Ngani.
Thanks, Judy. All right, we will now go on to item 12 on the agenda, which is the JMA implementation report. We have Mauri Ahipene to speak to this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen, if you would bear with me. I have taken the time just to prepare 3 slides. I'm not going to take too much time though, because I think we're already well behind. So I'll just work through this really quickly, and then we can get on to the Raukawa reports, which I think are probably far more important than what I'm going to cover. Just very quickly, this co-governance committee is, I guess, tasked with the oversight of the implementation of our joint management agreement, and so reporting therefore on how well we're doing with regard to meeting our obligations is really important for you to be able to do that. And so the obligations report presented hopefully enables you to get that overview, but also to monitor how well we're doing and have, I guess, conversations about how we might address any issues and achieve full compliance, I guess. So in the report, there is a dashboard. And so this is what the dashboard looks like. Just quickly, it shows that we have 29 obligations in the JMA. Of the 29, 14% are complete, and that relates to 4 of our obligations. 55% are on track, or 16 of them. 21% are yet to be triggered. So that's 6 of the obligations. And then 10% require some attention, but this is actually 3 obligations. So we'll dive into that a little bit shortly, because that's probably where we should be focusing our efforts. So those that are having issues. So these are the 3 obligations that are having issues. The first one relates to JMA review. So the initial JMA review was undertaken back in 2017. And as you can see, the first bullet point on the screen, I guess, shows that we should be reviewing the JMA between 2 to 5 years. So we're certainly outside of that timeframe. I just wanted to flag that our next co-governance hui, we may well be bringing another report, I guess, to the table regarding an approach to the JMA review. And that'll give us, I guess, enough or sufficient time to have a bit more kōrero with Anaru and his team around what that JMA review approach might look like. The second bullet point on the screen shows the obligation where we, I guess, have an obligation to enter into a discussion about extending the scope of the JMA. But because we haven't reviewed the JMA recently, we also haven't had a discussion on the scope of the JMA. So watch this space. When we enter into a JMA review, we certainly expect that the scope of the JMA will be a key kaupapa for discussion. And then just lastly, customary activities are to be discussed at our quarterly operational meetings. This particular obligation isn't being met, and it's largely due to the fact that we just haven't had visibility of all of the obligations in the JMA. We haven't really paid attention to them. And so reporting in this manner will also assist us to make sure that we have visibility of all of the obligations and are doing what we need to be able to deliver on them. This particular obligation arguably should be relatively straightforward to shift from having issues to on track, because it basically requires a conversation to be had between the Regional Council and Raukawa staff when we do meet at the operational hui. So I just wanted to cover that really briefly. I'll leave it there and ask for any questions. If there are some obligations that you're particularly interested in and I'm unable to answer them because they may be the responsibility of another area of the business, then I can take that away and come back at a later date.
Any questions from Ali? Anadu?
Nā koe, Mauri. Yeah, just acknowledge there's some works that we are also currently doing in the JMA space and under the obligations of our JMA. We've recently just been through a restructure within our team, and we've got a team member now focused on our JMA agreements and ensuring we are ensuring we are trying to meet the obligations to our JMA agreements and ensuring that those JMA agreements are still fit for purpose. So yeah, we would welcome any engagement, Mauri, around that. I think it's a timely conversation for us to be having.
If there's no further questions, then can I have a mover to accept the report? Trustee Oxum, and a second in you, Madam Co-Chair. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
It can be 5 minutes if you like, Debbie. Depends how much questions.
Lunch is getting cold, so.
No, I am mindful of time, so I will go relatively quickly, and I can take it that paper has been read. You'll be pleased to note since our last JMA meeting in 2022, where the Raukawa climate change strategy was mentioned, we have completed that piece of work, albeit we at that hui we discussed the Raukawa green economy strategy, which contained a Raukawa climate change strategy. We've separated those two documents, and we've now got a Raukawa climate change strategy, taha tū ki te rangi, mō tai ki te whenua. And yes, that is in reference to our tūpuna and our kapahaka champions, mō tai tangatarai. So yeah, that is Raukawa, so kia ora mai. But I would just like to mention the climate change strategy does align closely with the Waikato Regional Council climate change roadmap. We do think there is significant opportunity within that roadmap, and to meet with Raukawa and discuss some of those opportunities. The paper does mention what those opportunities may be. I would mention that it has been disappointing that we haven't had that engagement to date, and we are really keen to sit down with Waikato Regional Council and have that discussion.
If I could just comment, I just wanted to introduce Councillor Jennifer Nicol, who joined us earlier in the meeting just as an observer, but just in relation to this matter that we're discussing now. Councillor Nicol is the chair of our Climate Action Committee here at WRC, so just want to make you familiar with or committee members familiar with Jennifer, and I'm sure that she was excited to see this paper and certainly would respond positively to your call for active engagement between the organizations.
Just try and stop me.
No, that's good. Yeah, thanks so much. I'm reading it presently because I hadn't read it before the meeting yet. Thank you.
So just to, sorry, Cheers, just to outline some actions going forward for this rōpū around this strategy, and I do know that they're going to meet up with Jen, but we are looking to kōrero with whoever around the support, some support of resourcing, data and research, partnership and collaboration, and possibly funding, but we're looking at maybe how do we go to those national heritage areas around how we go for funding around this. But hopefully, I'm not sure whether the conversations they're going to have with our climate change chair is where this might happen, or it might happen with Mauri's team around the JMA perspective. To sort of, I'll put it on the table that there are some things we're looking at wider for the climate change, for this rōpū to get the climate change out there. Okay.
Anybody? Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, tēnā koe Anuru, I really enjoyed reading this. Just curious, how, if you've shared it with the district council yet and what their sort of response is in this general work stream and are you able to sort of ensure it gets broader coverage throughout the Iorohi, not just for Raukawa, but for the rest of the community, you know, because it seems that would be quite useful, yeah.
Yeah, kia ora, Stu. Part of the pieces of work that we're currently looking at is how the strategy is presented, and so we are trying to seek some external funding around digitising the report or the strategy. As yet, we've just had some very brief conversations with council. This is the first time it's been presented at a JMA hui, but the intention would be to continue that.
Because, seems to me a logical thing that I would have to walk alongside you guys here.
Okay, Councillor Coxon.
Madam Chair, yeah, thank you, Karakia, for that as well, because in that meeting in ICM in next month, I think that's a very good point that you can bring up in councillor time, that wherever we land with the Heritage Fund, we should make sure that all stakeholders get the information of how to apply for the funding. Yeah, that's a really good point. We should make that far more public, or make sure we go out to the stakeholders and make sure that everybody is going to get a chance to take on that funding. We shouldn't just allow, sure, the ones that are doing a good job at the moment, they'll most probably still be in line, but it's no reason why new ones can't have a go. Yeah. So thank you for that. It's a really good point. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Anything else to add to that? Hi, I'm a mover for the report. I can move the report. Second it. Shall I? All in favour? Against? Carried.
All right, home stretch. Everybody's tummies are obviously grumbling. All right, this is item 14 on the agenda. Te Mauri or Waihou. This is on page 76. Nanaru.
Dana, if I can take the paper as being read, Te Mauri o Waihou project is one of our cornerstone projects that we're currently working on. We received funding through the Jobs for Nature funds that were made available prior to, following COVID, and it's been, the Waihou, as is outlined in that report, is a significant water body within our takiwa, which holds significant cultural values for us. We've been really excited by the project and some of the outputs that have been achieved. And I guess one of the concerns with the funding coming to an end in 2025 is how do we ensure that those achievements are maintained and sustained. So, yeah, we are exploring options with some of our external stakeholders around what that might look like. I note in Marley's presentation, one of the work-ons were joint projects. I also note the Natural Heritage Fund that is available and whether this is an opportunity for Raukawa and Waikato Regional Council to address both those issues and look at a joint project, a comprehensive project around the Waihou, and look to utilise some of the Natural Heritage Fund for that. So although that isn't in the report, it was just what come out of some of those other reports today. So we are seeking funding. We are looking to explore what that might look like, and we are very open to conversations. So, kia ora.
Any questions? Any?
So, thank you, Chair.
Katarina?
Just to elaborate on this area and Skype, I guess, to Robbie, you know, this is where your Waihou starts. But we've had there's been a little bit of controversy after there was a slip there. We've been in deep discussions with South Waikato District Council, and we think we've come to a space now. We hope we come to a space now. But they are looking at opening up, you know, the walkway. As you know, it's closed because of the slip. That doesn't stop us from making sure that the work we've done in there doesn't get degraded. But what it has done is means that the people are now swimming down at the bridge, and we had to do a lot of work around the danger of people parking on the main road, you know, to do all of this. It took a while to make the public understand how dangerous it was for them to go up there or jump over the fence or whatever. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that we keep close tabs on that, because there's a lot of work we've done there, and it's a beautiful place when it is open. So when it is open, I guess, you know, if you haven't been there, it'd be good to go back and have another look. But yeah, I just thought I'd like to highlight that.
Okay, of course, sorry, I shouldn't have butted in. I'd like to speak on that for a second. I've actually had engagement with Mark Pedersen. I think he's the Minister of Rural Communities or something like that. And if he has time to come up to the Waikato, he definitely wants to come up to the Blue Springs and have a look around and what could be done to help opening up the track and securing the asset that you've got already. So I've spoken to him once in Wellington, and I haven't had another chance to speak to him. He never come to Auckland, but when he comes to the Waikato, that is one thing that he wants to come down and see. So thank you.
And just I suppose further on that, I'm reflecting on another JMA that some of us attended, and we had our hui to start with, and then we had a field trip, and we went out and we saw various aspects of projects, you know, where history of working together, discussions with landowners of the strides that had been made. And that was really heartwarming. It was a way for that JMA committee to build on the relationships around the table, but also build a collective understanding of the issues and the methods of addressing them, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I felt it was a really rich experience for the committee. And so perhaps we can look at a way of incorporating that so that we build our connections amongst ourselves and our shared understanding. So we'll look, Madam Co-Chair, to incorporating that into our program going forward. I think if there's support around the table, which I'm seeing a lot of nods, could be that you just want the lunch, I don't know, but I'll take it either way. All right, So if there's no more questions.
Just a last comment
yes?
is that that track is on private land, you know, so the slip also happened on private land. One of our responsibilities was to ensure that it didn't impact on the river, you know, and the wetlands that is around that river that we help plant. So the conversations about when it's going to be open is going to be totally reliant on what the district council wants and what the owner would allow us to do. Yeah, so.
All right, do I have a mover for that report? Councillor Cookson, and a second in trustee Griffiths. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Fantastic. Well done, everybody. Got through our first hui. Yeah, look at that. We made up we picked up the pace, we saw the need, and we delivered. Well done. Well done, Madam Co-Chair. All right, so with that, we will close. Gota?
Well, thank you very much, everyone who attended today. Bruce, Stu, Robert, chairs, and all of our kai kōrero from every business, including this side. Can I finish with a story? Yuval Harari says stories bind us. They bind us to our past and they shape the way we behave right now. Just on the other side of the road from our Papakainga stew, Uncle Mick used to live. And this will go some way to why we care about our awa. Uncle Mick, when I was a young boy, was old. And we used to deliver dinner to him, kai for him as children. And one night, you know, it could have been any night, but it was one night. Uncle Mick, what are you going to have for tea tonight? And he said in his croaky voice, much like this, but he was way, way older. He says, "Oh, I've got a line catching me a tuna. It's been in the river overnight." And you know why that's important? Is because the health of our rivers isn't just a mythological, to us, isn't just a mythological story we've somehow inherited. They literally were, we got our kai from. He was living by himself in a home that had no running water. Electricity, I know it sounds like a bit of a Ronald Dahl story, but it's not. He collected water from his guttering into an old cream container so he could wash his dishes inside his house. And his kai the next day was going to be what he caught on his line from the Waihou River the next day. That's why these things are important to us. That's why we're here. And it's not even for us, and it's for tomorrow, but it's because of those stories that bind us to our awa. And you mentioned the kākahu. I've fished the kākahu, the waiumu, the umahini, the rapurapu, tuki tāpuri, where our marae is. So I will conclude on that. Me taku mihi kia koutou katoa ngā kai kōrero, ko koutou ngā he mana o tō tātou nei hui, tēnei rā, ko ngā kai kōrero, i hara mai ki te tautoko i anaru, ko koutou rā, tēnā koutou. Nōku te honori kia whakakapi tō tātou nei wā, ki te karakia, i hoanga mano, e te toku turi tapu whakaungia mai mātou ki roto i taro hanua. Pai here te anō mātou ki te rangi Māori ngā wā katoa ko te māngai hei tautoko mai, aia nei ake nei aia. Kia ora koutou.
All right, I do believe we have lunch in the Tui Kofi room, which is right next door.